never thought the day would come when I'd be told to leave my own home. "Can you believe our daughter is coming home, and we don't have a room for her?" my mother-in-law said. Her words stunned me. "You should move out." I had lived with my husband's family for years, enduring criticism and constant judgment. But now, they wanted me gone to make space for my husband's sister, Lauren, who was coming back for childbirth. "We can't keep someone who contributes nothing to this house," my mother-in-law said. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, unsure of what to do. "My name is Tracy. I'm 33, a dedicated office worker. After college, I secured a job at a well-known company, working my way up in sales. That's where I met Nick, my husband. He was a section chief at a client company, and we bonded over work discussions and shared ambitions. His sincerity and kindness drew me in, and soon, our professional relationship turned into love. We got married when I turned 30, moving into an apartment that made commuting easier for both of us. I was happy, balancing my career and personal life, until his family started interfering. My mother-in-law never approved of me. She had been a homemaker all her life and believed a daughter-in-law should be perfect at household chores. "You left dishes unwashed again. Look at this laundry pile. What kind of upbringing did you have?" she would snap whenever she visited on weekends. I tried to explain that I focused on my career and wasn't skilled at housework, but she never listened. I relied on cleaning robots, and Nick helped with chores when he got home. He defended me, but his mother's judgment never stopped. She always found something to criticize. On top of the verbal attacks, she constantly asked Nick for money. "Oh, that reminds me, we're short this month. Can you send more?" She would switch from criticizing me to sweet-talking him into financial support. Nick, despite feeling burdened, always gave in. His parents, his brother, and his grandparents lived together, and their income was low. They had relied on Lauren's financial help, but when she got married and left, their struggles worsened. I knew we couldn't keep giving them money endlessly, but Nick felt responsible. Each time he sighed before reluctantly agreeing to his mother's requests. Eventually, another issue arose. His grandparents needed care. Lauren and my mother-in-law had handled it before, but with Lauren gone, the burden increased. The men in the family did nothing to help. After discussing it with Nick, we decided to move in with his family. "I'll keep working full-time," I insisted. I had no plans to quit my job to care for his family. "Of course, I'd never ask that of you," Nick assured me. But deep down, I worried. His family already disliked me. Would moving in make things worse? I pushed my doubts aside and tried to stay positive. As soon as we moved in, the complaints began. "Nick doing housework? That's absurd. That's a wife's duty," my mother-in-law spat. His father and brother nodded in agreement. "You should reduce your working hours or quit," they suggested. I refused. If I stopped working, we'd struggle financially. Supporting 7 people required a steady income, but they didn't care. "How ungrateful," my brother-in-law scoffed. Their resentment toward me grew, and soon I became the target of their frustration. The tension in the house was unbearable. Every day I felt their judgment and hostility pressing down on me. Work became my escape. I stayed late at the office, dreading the moment I had to return home. "Why are you always late? A wife should be home before her husband," my mother-in-law would scold. They belittled my job, calling it insignificant. But I was proud of my career. I had worked hard to get here. Nick saw my distress and tried to intervene. "Tracy contributes more to this house than you realize," he argued. "She pays for our expenses, even bought new furniture." But his family didn't care. "You need to discipline your wife," they said. I was done. "Nick, I can't stay here anymore," I admitted one night. He had been my only support, but even he couldn't change his family's mindset. He agreed. We should move out, he said firmly. We secretly started looking for a new home, planning our escape. But before we could leave, Lauren returned. This time, permanently. She arrived with a suitcase, pregnant and ready to reclaim her old room. It's only proper that she gets her space back, my mother-in-law declared, turning to me. Tracy, you need to leave. My breath caught. They wanted me out immediately. This was it. Nick stood up. If Tracy leaves, so do I. His voice was calm but firm. His family laughed. Fine, go ahead. They thought we were bluffing, but we weren't. That very day, we packed our belongings and left. I hired movers, ensuring every piece of furniture and appliance I had purchased came with us. The next morning, my mother-in-law called me, furious. How dare you take everything? The house is empty. I smirked. You told me to take my belongings, so I did. She sputtered, but I hung up, knowing this was just the beginning of their downfall. A month later, the calls started. Come back. We can't pay the bills, my mother-in-law pleaded. When we left, their finances crumbled. The loan for home renovations, previously covered by our income, now burdened them. They had no savings, no backup plan. Nick isn't here to pay your bills anymore, I said coldly. Figure it out. Her voice wavered. At least let us move in with you. I laughed. You wanted us gone. Now enjoy your space. I blocked her number, ending the conversation. Nick sighed, feeling guilty, but I knew we had made the right decision. Years passed. We thrived in our new home, free from their manipulation. Nick and I built our careers and considered starting a family. One day, curiosity led us back to his childhood home. But it wasn't theirs anymore. A for sale sign stood in the yard. Strangers lived there now. What happened? Nick murmured. A neighbor filled in the blanks. Without us, the family's struggles worsened. Lauren, secretly divorced, stayed with them, but even with her job, they barely managed. The grandparents developed dementia, needing full-time care. My mother-in-law, overwhelmed, left with Lauren, abandoning the household altogether. With no one to care for them, Nick's father and brother placed the grandparents in a facility, funding it with their dwindling income. Eventually, unable to keep up with expenses, they sold the house. They really lost everything, Nick said, a mix of emotions crossing his face. It's sad, but it was their own doing. A few days later, my mother-in-law, desperate, reached out again. Life is hard. Let us move in with you, she begged through a neighbor. Nick hesitated. I didn't. Absolutely not, I said. We won't be their safety net again. Nick agreed. I'll check on Grandma and Grandpa, but I'm done with the rest. He cut off contact with the rest of his family, choosing peace over obligation. And so, we moved forward, stronger than before. Our journey wasn't easy, but we had learned one thing. Sometimes walking away is the only way to find true happiness.